Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we are now at the last part of the Sly Trilogy review, and our last game we're going to review is...
Sly 3: Honor Among Thieves.
The year that this game was released was 2005, while in 2004, Ratchet & Clank and the Jak and Daxter series has completed their trilogy of their series. In 2005, both those games released another game for their series, but unfortunately they were just spin-offs, distancing themselves from being a platformer game.
Though it was a disappointment for some platformer fans to not have a proper platformer sequel as a spin-off, it's just a middle of the road to both of the series. 2005 had platformers offered for their audiences, with great games such as Psychonauts and Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow. Plus, this was a great year for the Sly series to complete their own trilogy, with Sly 3: Honor Among Thieves.
That's right, in this installment of the series, they've kept the changes being made from Sly 2, making it non-linear and more playable characters other than Sly. Now with that out of the way, let's start out with the story.
You know, it's really hard for us to review the third installment of the series without spoiling anything from the second, because it continues right off from the last installment of the Sly series.
Without getting into spoilers, Sly and the gang are in one of the toughest challenges yet. The gang's new mission is to steal back the Cooper vaults that is filled with all the treasures and good stolen and inherited by the Cooper family. There is no way to open it except for Sly's cane that can be used as the vault's key. The Cooper vault was kept secret in Cane Island, hidden peacefully until our new antagonist, Dr. M, took control of the island and kept the vault as his. With the help of Bentley, Murray, and new members of the gang, which we'll get to later, was able to help Sly in accomplishing his goal. Sly was so close in accomplishing his task in opening the vault until Dr. M showed up and captured Sly with his cyborg monster, beating him in battle and just about to eat him.
But that suddenly stops there, because this shows that this is the actual ending of the game. Like many stories that open up with the ending, the story transitions to a flashback showing how it all began. It picks up right after Sly 2, having each of our character expecting such travesty. Thanks to the mystery member of the Claw Gang, Bentley is now in a wheelchair, and Murray blames himself for it, making him abandon the gang and find inner peace. Sly's new focus is now on the Cooper Vault, as his family treasure is stolen by Dr. M, but in order to do that he has to do more than just get Murray back into the gang, but also get some of the most skilled thieves to join his group in order to accomplish it.
But in order to get each of them in the gang, they must do a favor for them, which involves a long line of missions in order to fulfill their wish and impress them enough to join in the gang. In return, they must join the gang, and thus our hero's new adventure begins.
As you can see, Sly 3 is very similar to Sly 2, but Sucker Punch gave us much more than we all expected.
That's right, they made much more features and additions in this installment that I couldn't believe that they managed to put it in a PS2 game.
Sly's gameplay isn't really that different, as he can jump, climb on rails, walk on ropes, crawl in small areas, pickpocket for coins and jewellery, and do more with additional power-ups. New in Sly's gameplay is to disguise himself as one of the guards and other occupations to get past through guards. Only having the consequences of getting caught, you have to say the password and memorising the button combinations given to you by Bentley. If you want to know more of Sly's gameplay, look at my past review on this game.
Returning to the series as playable characters are once again Bentley and Murray. Though you don't play as him in the beginning of the game, the Murray will soon return to the gang. Murray's gameplay remains the same as the powerful character that can take down enemies easier than anyone else because his gameplay is more action-packed and he causes more damage. New to his gameplay is that he can now cuddle into a ball, which gives him the ability to bounce high in the sky. But Bentley's gameplay is different than before because, as you can see, he is now in the wheelchair, thanks to our mystery Claw Gang member from Sly 2. But don't think that Bentley's gameplay is worse here, because having him on the wheelchair has more advantages than before. Similar to the last game, he still has the ability to knock out his enemies with a tranquilizer, playing a hacking minigame to unlock codes and doors, and drop and throw bombs to blow away his enemies. New to Bentley's gameplay in Sly 3, he can use a jet booster that reaches to higher areas, he can finally pickpocket guards, attack enemies by twisting his wheelchair, looking for codes in the paintings, and so much more from upgrading from his hideout's computer.
Like the last game, Sly 3 is a multi-genre game, a platformer mixing stealth, sandbox, and many more genres judging by its many games and missions. Also, like the last game, Sly 3 is divided into chapters, which each of them to play as at different levels and other parts of the story. In Sly 2, each episode's objective was to steal one or more parts of the clockwork parts, and in here your objective is to make new recruits. In doing so, you must fulfill their wishes in order for them to join you, which involves going through many missions because into completing the chapter. Like a sandbox game, you have a non-linear area to roam around to get to missions for each separate character to do.
You can once again change playable characters to Bentley, the Murray, or Sly from their secret hideouts. Many missions require any of those three characters, so the player gets a chance to play all three of them, and remember, they all have different advantages. My main complaint with Sly 2 is that many of the missions in that game weren't all that fun. Having the beginning of each episode to be investigating and taking pictures, rail shooter minigames, and many more trying too hard to fit the story for Sly 2. Well, here in Sly 3, I actually enjoy more than half of the missions offered in this game. You're able to go through missions that are just unbelievably amazing to go through. From disguising yourself to communicate with other characters and enemies, a brand new unlocking safe system, fighting codes and paintings, aerial combat, causing chaos in a bar, using the truck to capture scorpions, and so much more that is just absolutely non-repetitive, making the experience of playing each of the chapters to feel very different. Most importantly, in Sly 2, there were some missions that I actually like, but I can't replay such a mission so easily because in order to get to that mission, you have to go through the entire episode again. But in Sly 3, they heavily improved the game by making the player to choose whatever mission the player wants to replay again without having to go through all the other missions before that mission just to get there. And to put a cherry on top, you also got new recruits to add even much more variety.
Oh yeah, I was getting to that.
Now let's discuss each of the new characters in order.
Our first new recruit is the Guru. His story is that he's Murray's master in helping him to find inner peace, but for him to join in, he wants the factory to be destroyed for polluting his territory in Australia. Since he has such magical and mysterious powers, this makes him very useful in possessing one enemy at a time. All you have to do is jump in onto an enemy and press the circle button to commence possession, but weirdly enough he can only make enemies run fast as hell and direct them to wherever he wants them to be. The only problem with this character is that he can't attack, and even though he's not the worst character, he's still not that enjoyable to play as.
There's no argument there. Our next character is Penelope. She is the master of engineering and using such mechanics like the RC cars and choppers for various situations such as getting to small areas that characters cannot reach or protecting a character up in the air. Penelope is so adorable in her own unique way because she's always so kind to each member of the Sly Gang. Getting off topic, but doesn't she remind you of Bianca from Spyro Euro the Dragon?
Oh yeah, she does, doesn't she?
Like Bianca and Hunter, she is a love interest to Bentley, as they both have a lot in common with the nerdy thing and all. My only complaint is that you can't control her on foot, only can control her machinery. But my biggest nitpick is that, why is she all of a sudden the only character to control mechanical parts when in the last game, Bentley was able to use machines like the chopper and turret guns to be in action?
I don't know, we gotta have new characters to do something. Our new recruit is both of our favourite bosses from Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus, Panda King. It was ingenious to have a memorable villain to not be forgotten by putting him now as the good guy. His story is that his daughter is forced to get married by the powerful General Tsao, and he's banished out of his kingdom and is now in mercy with Sly for his help. It's great to play as this character because he used karate kicks as his attack and shoot out giant Chinese fireworks at numerous enemies and objects. Put it simply, he is the best new character to play as, despite the fact that he's really underused.
I can't agree with you more. Our last new recruit is the lovable boss from Sly 2, Dimitri. Even though we met him in the beginning of the game, he becomes a new recruit at the near end. He made a deal with Sly to join him in return of his release from jail, after held captive from Carmelita Fox. His specialty is that he's a scuba diver, making him the perfect guy to swim underwater. Since all the other characters can't swim, he is very useful at getting things done underwater. I know that many people hate underwater levels, but hear me out. These underwater levels works quite well. You're in first person, and you can shoot a harpoon in defense against sharks, jellyfish, and more, and he can swim sideways to avoid enemy attacks. Other than that, there's nothing much to say other than collecting stuff, defeating enemies underwater, and getting the job done, and there's not that many missions to play as Dimitri in this game.
And finally, you get to play as Carmelita Montoya Fox. Even though she isn't a recruit, you can only play her when she's doing her part of the story, and all she does is use her signature ray gun and fire at her enemies. After she takes down a target, that's pretty much it for her, until you play her again in another chapter.
But the downfall with all the new characters is that you can't choose any of the new ones to play as. Even when switching characters in the hideout, you can only switch to either Sly, Bentley, or the Murray. You only can play the new characters at certain part of the mission, where any one of those characters can help out the character that you chose to play as. The biggest flaw about having new characters to be unplayable is that you'll never know when are you going to be able to use them when you start a mission. Just imagine how awesome would it be to play as the Panda King without any limits and blast everything to pieces with his fireworks.
Yeah, you're right. Since we're already in complaining territory, let's talk about some of our problems with Sly 3. For me, when I discovered that this game has local multiplayer, I was hoping for it to be as good, if not better, than Ratchet & Clank Up Your Arsenal, aka the best multiplayer on the PS2. One reason for it being a downer is that the split screen is too small for both players, but a bigger one is how unmemorable it was for just to have two players. With such great cast of characters, yet you can only play as Sly, Carmelita and Bentley on two players.
Since we're now discussing about the multiplayer, you got various multiplayer modes, such as Cops and Robbers, where Sly and Carmelita fight each other in an open world. Seems cool at first, but considering that it's too big, most of the time you're just chasing and trying to find each other, which ruins the fun out of it.
You got dogfighting, which is just as boring as playing Star Fox 64's multiplayer, where all you do is blast each other off in the air alone. And the one that frustrated me when playing with my friends, Galleon Duel. You play two different characters on two different ships. You can control the ship by turning left and right, and all you do is try to blast each other with the cannons. Already it was frustrating because it takes too much time to recharge your cannons, and just getting to your opponent just takes too much of your time.
Oh come on, I like this multiplayer. It's not really that bad if you know what you're doing.
And finally you got Hackathon, which is the only multiplayer that I like. It's based off Bentley's hacking minigames and not really different than just playing tank on the Atari 2600. The only difference is that you can play as Sly and Bentley working together to shoot off incoming targets, and they give you numerous of rounds to last the fun factor. And let's not forget the worst feature of all, the 3D effect.
Well, I have to admit that I like that Sucker Punch gave us 3D glasses that came with the game, but it sucks. Don't bother with it. It's not worth the headache. Besides, it was trying 3D a little too early when the gaming industry never really thought of it. Oh, and I almost forgot. They did it again. They changed Carmelita's voice for the third time. First it was that lovely French accent, which I prefer, then an American accent, and now a Spanish accent? Why couldn't you just keep the original voice? It added that film noir atmosphere that I loved in the original. Speaking of which, the film noir feel was a bit weaker in this installment of the game. Many of the levels in this game were set in daylight and sunset, and I miss that cozy feel of sneaking through the darkness, which is lacking in this installment of the series. And yet, I still have a huge problem with the power-ups being heavily limited like the second game, while the first one was unlimited. Other than that, I have much less complaints in Sly 3 than I had with Sly 2, where I had a list of things that I just didn't like in that game.
I agree. The missions in Sly 4 were just totally fun. Sucker Punch managed to come up with so many original ideas playing through these missions, many of them from a massive airplane fight, using a truck to capture scorpions, defeating giant Carmelita, being in a disguise to talk to other characters, new stealth missions and new characters gameplay. Each and one of those missions are very fun, and to make the game better, once you beat the game you can replay any mission you like, or use even a bigger challenge replaying them in Master Thief Challenge, which is similar to Hero Mode from Jak 2 and 3 and Challenge Mode for Ratchet & Clank, and so much better than going through Master Sprint in the first game.
A huge improvement with the series is that when you pickpocket enemies for jewelry, you don't have to go all the way back to your computer and sell it, which wasn't that fun, but when you steal a jewelry from a guard, it tells you how much it costs and it automatically goes into your collection of coins, making everything much easier. Another big improvement is the stealth mechanics that was enhanced to another level. Though each of the disguises were meant for one episode, but having them just made the enemies more humorous as you can communicate with them. Speaking of which, earlier Zookstar said that this game was a multi-genre game, and he wasn't kidding because there were many parts of this game that changed a little from what the series is known for. It's really cool to see that you can communicate with characters in conversation trees similar to adventure games. However, it seems that they'll keep talking until you hit the right reaction, and there isn't that many that has consequences in getting the wrong one, except when you're talking to one of the pirates in the 5th chapter. And speaking of the 5th chapter, even though Zookstar doesn't really like the ship command or the treasure hunting feature, I love this part of the game because it's very reminiscent to one of my favorite PC games, Sid Meier's Pirates, and the battleship gameplay from the Curse of Monkey Island, as they all have similar controls and adventure to go with it. Out of all the missions that had the longest hours of gameplay for me, this one was the longest because you can fight off as many ships as you want, plus have multiple treasures to hunt as you like. Honestly, this is the best pirate level in any platformer game, period.
Oh, I almost forgot. What did you think of the boss fights?
To be quite honest, the boss fights in Sly 3 are the best in the entire series. If you ask me what my favorite is, I will have to say battling Master Zhao in the 4th episode. First you fight Kung Fu style on the top of the bamboo sticks, and it goes even more crazier when they go fighting on foot, destroying all the bamboo shoes in your way while at it.
I definitely agree with you there. This is what boss fights and platformers of today need to take notes of, and this is without a doubt the most epic boss fight in not just the game, but the entire franchise as well, and I think there should be a boss fight just like this again in Sly 4. So what did you think of the new characters?
Each of them were great, except for the Guru. It's amazing how you got Sly, Bentley, Murray, and 4 new characters to keep the player engaged and occupied. Though Penelope would have been much better as a playable character than just controlling her RC car, but I just couldn't help but to love her as a sweet character. And of course, we should never forget about the Panda King. Totally underused in my book. Just looking at this great cast of characters were just so much better than the new characters in Spyro Year of the Dragon, because in that game, more than half of the characters weren't fun to play as other than Spyro. But here, you can easily connect with each of the characters as they make multiple conversations toward each other and develop along the way.
I have to admit, the story in Sly 3 wasn't really as good as in Sly 2, because in Sly 2, you got a really great, dark, unpredictable story that made the game worth a damn, but here in Sly 3, with a weaker story, we have a much better opportunity of having some of the best missions ever in any video game, because crazy missions don't really work with great plots.
So the way we see the Sly trilogy, each of those 3 games have a very different experience. You can play Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus for its simplicity, nostalgia factor of old school 3D platforming gameplay, Sly 2 Band of Thieves for the best story, more opportunities, and non-linear gameplay, and play Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves for the best missions and mini-games to go through. All of them have a good reason why you should enjoy each and every one of those games in the trilogy.
Well, I think we pretty much wrapped up everything that needs to be said about Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves. So what do you think about the overall game?
This is the 3D platformer that added so much, and yet a bit too much with the multiplayer and 3D effects. But that shows that Sucker Punch really cared about the series, and they did their very best in making a huge wrap-up of the series. Unlike Sly 2, there weren't that many missions that annoyed me. Instead, it kept me coming back to it because it's one of those games that begs to be played more than once. Sucker Punch spared absolutely no expense with Sly 3, and it wasn't afraid to rock the player's world. That's why I give Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves a 6 fingers out of 5. Clearly, this is one of the best PS2 games ever made, and I changed my mind thinking that Sly 1 was my favorite because I didn't get a chance to play this game when it was released because this game wasn't sold in Korea, where I used to live at, which was a huge missed opportunity for me, and thankfully, it wasn't too late to experience such an amazing game.
For me, this is my favourite platformer of all time. This is the prime example of why I'm a fan of the series. The fun factor in this game for me is through the roof, the comedy is one of the best ever in a game, the characters here are some of my favourites ever, and the lasting appeal is forever. I couldn't miss this opportunity of missing out this review with Gexup, because I have some of the best memories with this game ever. With that being said, I give Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves a 7. Count it! 7 fingers out of 5.
Wait a minute, you can't do that. I was saving that 7 fingers out of 5 for my favorite game of all time. You can't do that.
Too late, I already claimed it before you did, and I waited for this opportunity to say it right in your face.
It's on, bitch, bring it on. Alright, so any final words before we end this review?
Yes, I just so can't wait to see Sly 4 Thieves in Time. I've waited over 7 long years of waiting, and this is what the PS3 really needs now.
Indeed. All we need next is Jack 4 to be on the PS3. So everybody, I hope you enjoyed each of our review on the Sly games. Join with me next time when I do a vlog about our memories with the Sly games with my best friend Amuya. Even though I have to break my promise with Amuya about doing the Sly Trilogy review with him, I can still keep a little bit of it. So anyway, thank you Zookstar for joining with me and doing the Sly Trilogy review. And to everyone, be sure to check out his channel, please subscribe to him, and give him your support.
Boo chow!